All right. Um, I'm hoping one of our speakers will be able to join in a minute, but let's just go ahead and start with everybody who's joined already. So welcome everybody to our event today on advice for startups, and especially when expanding to the UK. This event is organized with Finnish-British Chamber of Commerce. My name is Jade, and I'm the general manager. And our lovely colleagues from Norwegian Chamber of Commerce and two successful Finnish startups, Leadoo and Logmore, and an FBCC member, Marks Clerk. Before I introduce you to our speakers, let's go through some housekeeping rules. So bear in mind, this event will be recorded and shared on our website afterwards. And please keep yourself muted during the event. And of course, if you have any questions, we'll have a Q&A at the end of the event. So you'll have a chance to ask your questions either through the chat or by unmuting yourself. Our speakers for today will be Simon Portman, the Managing Associate and Solicitor for Marks Clerk, Henrik Viitanen, the co-founder of Leadoo, and from Logmore, we'll have Niko Polvinen, the co-founder and the CEO, if he hopefully will be able to log in. We're trying to reach him right now. But shall we go ahead and hope that Niko will be able to join at the end of the event, at least. So yeah, maybe I'll just ask Henrik first. Where did you get the idea for Leadoo? And can you tell us a little bit about the company?
Yeah, sure. So the idea of Leadoo started with my co-founder Mikael. He's Mikael Costa, and he was running a company called Jobilla, which is a recruitment platform. And he noticed one thing that every single customer was struggling with was that they were all driving a lot of traffic to their job postings on their website. But the biggest problem with that was that the conversion rates were quite low on them. So even though they were getting a lot of traffic on the websites, it wasn't really getting more applicants to apply for the jobs. And he started thinking how he could make it, well, to get the conversion rate up. And the idea was to make the job postings a bit more engaging. So that was how the original idea of the Leadoo in-page bot started. It's a bot that you embed straight into contents, and you could do pretty much a virtual job interview, a short one within the job posting. And then we noticed that, yeah, it's working quite well on the job postings. The conversion rates were going up. And the whole idea with Leadoo was to take it on the recruitment side. But then we noticed that, okay, it's working on this. And let's say 2.5 years later, the job postings are pretty much the smallest thing of Leadoo. So we're working with lead conversions and all the websites, all the parts of it. And that's how the idea started.
Okay.
And what the company, if you want to know, so it was founded 2018 in September by me and Mikael da Costa. And now about 2.5 years later, we've grown from 2 people to closer to, let's say, 100 people at the moment. And we have offices in Helsinki, Stockholm, London, and Malaga at the moment. And trying to grow quite aggressively.
Okay, sounds good. Simon, could you tell us a little bit about your relation to startups and what you do when you work with startups?
Yeah, certainly. We at Marks Clerk give commercial contract and IP advice to startups. Some of them are spun out from universities. Some have set up separately. And the sort of things we advise them on at the outset are making sure that they own or have the requisite access to their intellectual property, be that patented or patentable technology or copyrighted software or trademarks for their brands. And then we also give them advice moving forward on how to grow their intellectual property portfolio by means of further applications. and also the contracts they need to enter into in terms of growing and developing and then commercializing their products, so R&D, manufacture, distribution, sales, and that sort of thing. And because the UK is one of the main startup centres in the world, and we have offices in core startup clusters like London, Oxford, Cambridge. So we've seen a lot of startups grow from inception to trade sale or becoming big multinationals.
Okay. Then, Henrik, I would like to ask you, when setting up the business, did anything take you by surprise in the beginning?
Actually, quite a lot of things. So let's say, for example, the culture differences between the business culture in Finland and the UK. I think that was the biggest surprise, and how different the markets are. And for example, just the buying process in the UK, it's totally different than in Finland. So I guess we did our homework quite badly. So we thought it's going to be the same as in Finland, and you just call up people and close some deals. But we actually noticed quite quickly that it's totally different compared to Finland. And also,
how is the culture different?
So the culture is different in the way that in Finland, or let's say even the Nordics, we're quite straightforward people. Let's say I have a discussion with someone about our product. They'll tell me their opinion on it, and then we set up the next steps on the deals. And I know for a certainty that we're going to follow the next steps, and I'll get a yes or no answer. But in the UK, you might have a discussion that the customer thinks it's really good, and they're saying that, yeah, we're going to buy it, and we're going to have just some internal talks about it. And then once you're trying to reach a customer, there's a term called ghosting. You just can't catch the customer anymore, and it's really hard in that sense. So that doesn't really happen in the Nordics the same way. So that was the biggest culture difference I noticed.
Yeah. All right. I see that we now have Niko here as well from Logmore. So maybe, Niko, you could tell us a little bit about Logmore and where you got the idea for the company.
Yeah, thank you, and sorry for being a few minutes late. I I thought it was at 3 p.m. my time, so yeah.
Time zone difference.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about that. But yeah, thanks for the opportunity to be here. So my name is Niko Polvinen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Logmore, and we provide condition monitoring solutions to logistics. And the core innovation we founded the company around on was dynamic QR codes, which my friend and co-founder Antti got the idea about 4 or 5 years ago, and the idea was later developed and built into the small devices with a QR code on the front side of the device, and the QR code automatically changes for each new data point this collects, meaning like temperature, humidity, shocks, and other like meaningful things that matter for the quality of the goods. And
Okay, and we were just talking about if there was any surprises when setting up the business, or maybe cultural differences when you're expanding to new markets. And I already asked this from Henrik, but maybe you have something to say as well.
yeah, well, of course, like each region, like geographical areas, have like own different like requirements, especially in our case specifically. Like we deal a lot with like pharmaceutical companies and like food and beverage industries, where there's quite a lot of different regulations and different requirements, which might differ quite a lot, for example, between like North America, EU, Asia. So at least personally, I feel that it's slowed down our growth in certain regions quite a lot, because we have had to like look into so like detailed regulation and laws and all that, and gather the documentation to be able to actually like work in the markets.
Yeah. Henrik, what would you say were the biggest challenges in starting up or when moving to the UK?
Pretty much the same answer as on the previous one. So I don't think we were prepared enough once we came to the UK. We thought it was going to be pretty much the same as in Finland. We should have studied the market a bit better, and maybe even had some sparring sessions with people who have done it previously. Also learning and understanding how the market works in the UK, that took a while. So we hired most likely someone, let's say local, that had the experience to teach us instead of trying to learn everything ourselves. And pretty much the first biggest challenge we had was not getting enough meetings, because for example in Finland I could just pick up the phone and book 20 meetings in a day. In the UK, let's say if you're an SDR who does meeting bookings, your target for a month is 10, and I could do that in a day easily alone. But that was like the biggest challenges we noticed in the beginning, and it was a good learning experience, but I wish we had done our homework a bit better.
Yeah. Niko, would you say that, would you relate to what Henrik just said, that you should have, I don't know, maybe studied a bit better, done your research beforehand, or is there something else you would do differently now knowing better?
Well, of course, like I think we should have studied a bit better about, like, especially in our case, it's less about like the let's say daily operations of Logmore, and like I think in our case we had pretty good like expectations what's it's going to be, thanks to like good hires we made, that we were able to like pull in the like knowledge into the company beforehand about those. But what kind of has been a challenge for us has been to learn the really like complex logistical operations of our customers, and that has definitely had its like challenges, like how we build our product. We have this idea that we think that the let's say supply chain operations of a big pharma company work in this and this way, and then we learn that they do not do exactly that what we thought they are doing, so we need to shift something and things like that. So it would have been better if we'd maybe earlier hired people with more like concrete logistics knowledge.
Yeah. And Simon, would you have any tips, since you're local here in the UK, that maybe anybody else who's thinking about expanding to the UK could do beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what both speakers have said, and I concur with a lot of it. I think that for a start, yeah, the sort of mentality and style of Nordic business people is much more direct, and yeah, they can come to Britain and find that the way of doing business can be a bit less direct and a bit more flowery. And at the same way, sometimes British people can find, the Nordic approach a bit blunt, and sometimes think that that's, being unfriendly when it's actually just being to the point. I remember a Norwegian once said to me, I don't understand the fact that you send someone an email in Britain and you say, "Dear so-and-so, I hope you're well, blah, 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 blah." And I only spoke to them yesterday, and they say, with us, it's just a one-liner. To be honest, I actually prefer the Nordic way because it saves time. Because you wouldn't go into someone's office and say, "Hello, how are you, blah, blah, blah," when you actually spoke to them the day before. I think there's that. I think also, you've got to remember that the UK is a lot bigger and a lot more densely populated than Finland. So if you're finding it hard to make connections or book meetings and get traction initially, it may well be because there's a lot more, competition for people's attention here. I don't know whether that's the case, but I suspect that might be an element of it.
Yeah. So maybe let's move to more positive things. Henrik, what do you think you got just right when moving to the UK?
Well, if you're looking for positive answers, this is not the one. I don't think we got anything right in the beginning. I think it was the only thing we did right, we did learn from the mistakes we made in the beginning. And now it's starting to look hopefully a bit better and better day by day. So yeah, I don't think we did too much the right things in the beginning, but at least we learned from that. And now we're trying to streamline it to be a bit smarter. And we've done the things which now, a year later, the things we should have done immediately when we started.
All right, thank you. What about Niko? Do you think you got something just right?
Yeah, well, I think we of course, when being super critical about what we are doing, just like Henrik, we should have done 1,000 things better than we did. But on the other hand, if we look at what we have been able to actually make so far, in terms of customers and revenue and raised funding, we must have done something right. So it's I believe that the results have to at least somehow reflect what we have been doing.
Yeah, and would you say in general you regret going down the startup route, Henrik?
Not really. I think that the startup route is something that suits me. I'm not a corporate guy in the sense that I like to, because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. There's a lot of changes and you have to react quite quickly to new things, and you have to be on your toes all the time thinking about what to do next, and it keeps the life quite interesting. So I really like it, but of course it's not for everyone. So in my case, wouldn't change anything on that side.
Yeah.
I think I'm concurring with that, in that the people that like being entrepreneurs and doing startups, like the autonomy and the fact there is, that flexibility, and they thrive on the risk, that in some ways you're a hostage to the market and your investors. So it isn't for everyone, yeah. But that's why, a lot of entrepreneurs, if they sell their startup to big industry, they don't want to stick around. They want to leave and go and do the same thing all over again.
Yeah. And what about Niko? What do you think about going down the startup route?
Well, I definitely have enjoyed it. I Logmore actually isn't the first company I've been founding. There has been a couple of other companies I've been a part of the founding team before this, and prior to that I started my career in a startup. So I've basically only been in the startup world. So it's really hard to even think about any other routes.
Yeah. We already talked about this a little bit, especially regarding the cultural differences, but Henrik, what would you say are concrete examples of the differences when setting up a business in Finland and the UK?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was thinking about that for a while. In the UK, it's probably a bit more bureaucratical in a way. You have to have all the stuff set up. It takes quite a long time. In Finland, it's quite straightforward. You just register a company and find someone to do your bookkeeping and stuff like that. It doesn't take too long. In the UK, it was quite a lot of filling papers, and yeah, and that's why we took Mitch Consulting to help us on that side, and that was the smartest thing. Well, that was one thing that we did
Good.
right in the beginning, actually. We hired a company to do all the stuff like that, setting up the company. And then one big difference, we also noticed that, for example, the employment contract in Finland is about 1.5 pages, and we asked them to make a similar employment contract to the UK, and we sent it to, I think it was Ignition Law that wrote the contract for the UK market. And from 1.5 pages, it was suddenly, I think it was like 58 pages. So that was quite a big difference. And it had all the same stuff, but it was a bit more, well, let's say sophisticated. But that was from 1.5 pages to 58.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I think that contracts in England can be longer. I agree that it's great to keep them as, brief as you can. But they've got to be understandable, because in the worst case scenario, not only do the parties have to understand it, but the judge has to understand it if there's a dispute. But often, I think that contracts, often companies don't realise that they sometimes need to be more complex than you might think, because you've got to cover all the eventualities, or things that might go wrong. And usually, there's a lot of stuff in there, and companies that might think, what's the point of that? And often it's in there because someone once suffered because it wasn't. So it's always worth asking your legal advisor, why is that in there? Because they can then explain it, but also you'd want to know. And also it means that if you really want to shorten something for cultural reasons, so, for often, like when you're dealing with, say, Asia, where they might want shorter contracts, and you've already said that in Finland they're often shorter. And, that means that if you leave something out or shorten it to sort of accelerate the conclusion of the agreement, at least you know what the risk is and you can make an informed decision.
Yeah, that's true. I agree 100% with that. And that's pretty much why we took the Ignition Law to do the contracts, because we didn't understand enough what was supposed to be included. And it was smart that we had them do the contracts, since now we're covered all the way. And with the Finnish contract, I don't think we would have been too well covered.
Yeah, and Niko, as I've understood, you don't have anyone from Logmore based in London or in the UK right now. Has that affected or been challenging for Logmore?
Yeah, we do have one employee who moved from UK to Helsinki, and he was there for a short period of time working for us, but like in general, definitely having like someone like on the ground there would be, especially during COVID, because it's not like possible to just jump on a plane and get there and help the customers, would be super beneficial. So that's why we are currently like on a larger scale thinking about like hiring people maybe like more across the globe, having like especially like customer success people like here and there to be able to like help the customers much faster and like be there for them.
Yeah. So Henrik, what would you say would be your tips for securing investment for your startup?
Okay, that's a really good question. So if you think about the Leadoo history, we've taken 2 investments in so far. The first one was when we were about 9 months old, and the last one was about 2 months ago. And we've noticed a few things with the investments that, for example, with the first investments, we didn't even know what we had to do to get investment. And it was quite lucky because we got contacted by all the investment companies. But if you're not being contacted, I think the most important thing is to find out what numbers are critical for your business in the eye of the investors. Because we, for example, had no clue on which numbers are the numbers that, for example, SaaS investors look at. And that was some good tips we got from the first investors. And they told that, all right, these numbers are the ones we have to fix because they are the numbers that all the investors will be looking at. So find out the specific numbers that are important in your industry. For example, for us, it's like lifetime value divided by customer acquisition cost, and that has to be an X amount. And that was one SaaS metric that we didn't even know existed until we took the first investment. So find out which numbers are important for your industry, and after that, focus on them and try to get them as good as possible. Because if you have those are the numbers that the investors will be looking at in the first stage. And if they're not good, I don't think they'll even look too close at your business.
Yeah. And Niko, would you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, really good points, Henrik, especially like when you have the like operations in the way that you have already customers, you have some kind of a product. We have this hardware component, and the whole product is it's so complex that we needed to raise money like a year or two before we actually were able to sell it to anyone. So that kind of changed the like the pitch and the approach we had to take. We were lucky enough to like get it closed like pretty quickly by having like we focused on really strongly about the pitch and the let's say narrative of the story that we told to the investors, and because they are human as well. So if you get them like excited, you paint the picture, and like they need to be able to feel that the team working on it is the team that will make it big. So I would focus on the like the team and the narrative of the pitch.
Yeah,
I agree on the narrative side also. It's really important to have a good narrative. For us, yeah, we were in different stages with Niko. We were already having like 100 customers at the moment that we started even thinking about the investment. But if we would have needed investment before we had customers, then it would be all about the narrative. But we were a bit luckier since we got to bootstrap the company until a certain stage, and we didn't even need investment, but we just wanted to grow faster, and that's why we took it in.
yeah.
I would agree with all of that. I mean, particularly when we're talking about the team, is that when we see new companies, you can't always tell if they're going to fail because of the technology or the market or whatever. But if they're going to fail because the people are wrong, you find that out pretty quickly. So, you need to have the right people in terms of them getting on with each other and with the outside world. And they also need to, have the right skill sets. And some of those might need hiring in. I think also you've got to be happy that, your technology or product might sound really great and interesting to you, but you've got to be happy there's a market for it. I mean, I could probably invent and get a patent for a steam-powered photocopier, but, what would be the point? I think also investment it's a bit like selling your house where, the buyer is going to crawl right over everything, all the paperwork, have got the necessary consents, are there any third-party rights? And if you're trying to get investment in or sell a company, it's like that, but 10 times as bad. And if you've not got everything in good order, it can be a real nightmare. So, I always say, act from day one, like you're going to need an investor or a buyer, because it'll make it a lot easier for when you do need one. And even if you don't need one, it'll make running the company so much easier.
Yeah, okay. So Henrik, Leadoo is already, did you say Stockholm, Malaga, and UK and Finland, right?
Yeah.
So what were your reasons behind these particular countries to expand to, and especially the UK? Like, why did you decide particularly to expand to the UK?
Yeah, so at the moment when we decided to go to the UK, we had offices at that stage in Finland and Stockholm, and it was when we took the first investment in 2019 during the summer. And of course, once you take in investment, you have to, most likely it's due to that they want to grow quite quickly. And yeah, then we were studying all the markets in Europe and decided on the UK market for a few reasons, because then we could send a core team because everyone speaks English. So it's quite simple. And also we did a market study on all the different markets on how they're using bots at the moment. And we noticed that UK market is really big, but not too many companies are actually using any kind of chatbots or anything on their website. And we thought it could be a good fit for the UK market because there's a lot of potential customers and most of them are not using chatbots. And that was pretty much the reasoning why we chose the UK in the end. And also, of course, the fact that we might want to grow to the US market at some point, and then the UK market might play a role in that also.
Okay, and Niko, I would have the same question for you. Why the UK? And maybe you could give me an example on the other geographical areas that Logmore has gone to as well.
Yeah, well, we don't yet have like an office there. In UK, we have offices, couple of offices in Finland, and now we have like one person in Italy. I think that for us, like why we started to heavily focus on like sales wise to UK, like pretty much the same reasons as Henrik mentioned, in a way that it's a huge market. There's a lot of potential. For us, it was we did some market research. We saw that there's like a couple of like major players in the logistics condition monitoring area, like leading the market in the UK, and we know that we are able to compete really well. We have like our technical advantage over those solutions. So it basically based on these factors, we decided that this is something we want to focus on. Okay, and Niko, since you don't have people in the UK at the moment, and I'm guessing it's probably had something to do with the pandemic. So how optimistic do you feel about the business climate after the pandemic, and where do you see Logmore heading in, say, next year or two? Well, for us, the pandemic, for a few months, it shut down many development projects we were doing with customers, because we are working with logistics, which kind of involves some physical world. You need to be in the warehouse, you need to be in the operations, so it's not possible to do it all online. But now it shifted completely. We were able to get into this COVID vaccine shipment game, and we have been securing millions of doses all around the world. So it actually has boosted our growth to be much faster than we ever anticipated at this time. So we definitely see that this will continue for us, especially for quite many years, because the COVID vaccine programs will be run for 3 years until the whole world is being vaccinated. So it's, and of course the same companies doing these vaccinations do have all other pharmaceuticals and reagents and test kits and whatever, which needs to be temperature monitored and all that. So we kind of are able to create the relationships with the right companies through this pandemic. Okay, that sounds really good. Henrik, do you have something to say about where Leadoo is heading in the future?
if you look at the future, it's a bit open due to the pandemic. So we were planning on opening US offices already about 6 months ago, but due to the pandemic, it's no point. So it all pretty much depends on how the pandemic will continue, because at the moment we're focusing on online sales and building online funnels to get more inbound. So it's not bad for us, but of course, face-to-face meetings have higher conversion rates to get in deals. But time will show. But either way, we're going to open new offices or then focus more and more on the online sales. So not a straightforward answer to that question.
Yeah, no
but
worries.
something there.
So what about Brexit? Has it impacted your business and how? Henrik?
Well, not really. Well, if you look at the Brexit, I don't think it's affected us at all because we can do everything online and all the salespeople in the UK. So we have a UK company already set up, so runs and operates on its own. And we do sell online products, so software, so it doesn't really affect us. We don't have to pretty much take anything into the UK. We're only selling online software, so it doesn't really affect us.
Yeah. What about Niko? Same question to you. Has Brexit impacted your business, and if so, how?
Well, not in a major way. So it like, of course, maybe some like small things here and there, especially when shipping, like importing, exporting, like the physical part of our product. But it's, at least so far, it's been really like minor, pretty much the same as it has been.
Yeah. I don't know if Simon had anything to add to that.
Yeah,
Brexit
I mean,
question.
yeah, from what I've seen, I think the biggest challenges for companies have been the whole import-export thing, and that seems to be ironed out a bit now, and the challenge of what to do with European employees over here. But interestingly, as Jade knows, we've already at the Finnish-British Chamber of Commerce done a webinar on this subject. So anyone wanting more information, contact Jade and she can send you the link. On the intellectual property front, certain types of intellectual property, like patents and copyright, weren't affected because they weren't related to the EU. Others, like the European trademark, has been replaced by an analogous national right. So again, feel free to get in touch with us if you need any specific advice on those. But no, I mean, most of the clients I deal with don't seem to be majorly disrupted over it. And I think, I think that now with the pandemic beginning to be less of an issue, I think things will open up again, and the economy here is already growing again. And yeah, I think one thing, interestingly, that has been a good effect of the pandemic is that people are now much more open to forging relationships and getting customers and suppliers and collaborators online, and being receptive to approaches from people they didn't previously know. I mean, I now know really well people from all over the world who I've never actually physically met, So, and I think the advantage of that in terms of efficiency and cost will continue, plus the fact that where you do need to do things physically, like make things and then transport them, that's going to get up and running again.
Yeah. So I guess Niko and Henrik could compare their answers to the next question, because I was going to ask what you see as the biggest benefit of either having your own employees in the UK or working remotely all the way from Finland.
Yeah, I could start off with that one. Well, during the pandemic times, there's no difference for us if we're working remotely from Finland or not, because all the UK employees are working anyways remotely. But when before the pandemic, it was actually quite easy to work. We had an office in London, I think it was near Old Street, and everyone's working from there. And we had a lot of face-to-face meetings with customers all around London. And if you compare the closing rates of an online meeting to a face-to-face meeting, it's, I think, 3 times higher in our case. Get the face-to-face meetings, or it used to be like that. Nowadays, people are actually learning to buy stuff online, which wasn't the case a year ago. So that's also switching in a way. But just building the trust with customers is much easier face-to-face, and having something in London, it always builds the trust than selling remotely from all the way from Finland. Even though Finland has a good reputation, we've noticed, but still it's always a difference having a physical location.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Niko wanted to add something to that, and let's hope you can get to the UK physically soon as possible as well.
Yeah, for us, especially during pandemic, it would have been super beneficial to have someone there to be able at least here and there visit physically the, let's say, if we have like a project to get the system into some supply chain from some factory or warehouse or things like that. It requires some on the ground work to get all the processes smoothly up and running. So that's definitely something which would help a lot, even though the sales and that side of things in our case seem to be working pretty well online. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this is my last question. So Henrik, what's the best advice you would give to someone who's thinking about setting up a startup?
Well, of course, that's a easy question to answer because we've already done it once. So what I would do differently is pretty much do your homework. So study the UK market and then find people who have already done the same thing you're about to do. So have sparring sessions with people who know the market, collect all their info and tips that they're giving, and actually listen to them and don't think know stuff better. And then also pretty much find your market fit, because we've already noticed that the market fit in the UK and Finland is a bit different. So what I would do differently, I would even take a few clients in for free just to find the market fit and do a few case studies with the customers. So once you start actually selling more and more, then you have the case studies and then the UK examples and references that you can show the customers, instead of showing companies that are in Finland and the people have never heard of. So do your homework, find out the market fit, and really prepare for your journey.
Okay, and Niko, do you have something to add?
Yeah, that was pretty good summary already from Henrik. So maybe what I would add is to learn your customers and learn what they're doing as well as possible, how they operate. Of course, it depends on the industry and the product and all that, but especially for us, it has been super important from the beginning to understand the customers as well as possible, because often in the beginning you tend to have you have this idea, you get funding for the idea, you have this theme, and you think you're this idea is brilliant, we got funding for it. And then you start to build the product and you shut the door and shut down the windows, and you stay inside and code your product or whatever you need to do to get it up and running. You get pretty too much focused on your own operations and the product, and that instead you should be focusing on what the customers actually want and what is the solution you provide to them.
Okay, Simon, do you have something else?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, and it's quite clear that this applies to the other two speakers anyway, but be really happy that this is really what you want to do, because that way you're going to do a better job in it, and it's going to be hard work and it's going to be stressful. At the same time, be aware that you need to take advice, and you're going to need to take other people on board, and that that may mean relinquishing some control. That you shouldn't be greedy about that. I think, but for that reason, I think it's very helpful if you get investors who are interested in and knowledgeable in your sector. So then, they can give you advice and they don't have unrealistic expectations. I think finally, it's probably a safe bet to say, work out how much it's going to cost to do something and how long it's going to take. And then add 50% to that in terms of time and amount, and you're probably going to be just about right then. Those are my take-homes, I think.
All right, so shall we give the floor to our participants if you had any questions? Mark, go ahead.
Okay, hello everybody. Nice to see some of you, and thank you very much to Henrik and Niko and Simon for their presentations. Really interesting, and their comments. So I'm representing Euro Partnerships. We're based in Warwick in England. What I'd like to ask Niko and Henrik is how important to you now and going forward are international sales partners? Do you foresee the recruitment and relationship with effective international sales partners as being part of your strategies? Thanks.
Do you want me to start or?
Oh, go ahead, Henrik. Yeah.
Yeah, so international sales partnerships, could you define a bit more closely what you mean by international sales partnership? Do you mean that some, for example, we have different kinds of partnerships for that? We could have a company that would be selling us, or then we could have let's say a media agency that would sell a part of their business, would be selling also Leadoo to their existing clients.
Yeah,
what do you mean?
All of those are partnerships. So in the tech world, they're usually called resellers. Sometimes they'd be called strategic alliance partners. So you're targeting the same customers and they're selling complementary services or products in addition to their own. But you take advantage of their market knowledge and their tried and tested channels to market. That's what I mean by partnerships.
Yeah, we're actually building that at the moment, and that's one of the things we're focusing. So we've actually started a Leadoo partnership program about 2 or 3 months ago. So we're actually, I think we have 4 or 5 partners in Finland, and in total we have 9 partners, and I think there's a few of them from the UK and then a few from the Dutch market. And now we're testing out the idea and hypothesis we have on that and find out what works, what doesn't, and then we're going to scale it up a bit later. So our answer would be we do see the value in that. It's just about finding the right way to operate within that field.
Yeah, for us, if I continue there, yeah, we see a lot of value in different kind of partnerships. For us, it's like mainly companies that are building something on top of our like existing technology stack. Let's say, like for example, the partnership we have with DHL on a global level. Basically, it means that they like instead of just like reselling what we have with the DHL branding, they actually provide something like some added value services to the end customers, which makes it like better for the end customer. You can, instead of just getting access to our cloud and getting the data logger, you actually get like smart shipment or something like that. So you get the shipping and you get the like all necessary like tracking and stuff like that. And then you get access to the cloud and the data logger. So it's like a more complete package, and partnerships like this is it's like super important in our industry.
Okay, any other questions?
Actually, I was wondering, so you mentioned earlier, we've heard that contracts in England can be longer and there's more formalities about setting up a company or a business in the UK compared with Finland. Have you noticed any other differences in the sort of legal framework in both countries, and any differences in, dealing with lawyers and patent attorneys and accountants and other professional advisors?
I'm guessing either Niko or Henrik could answer to this
Yeah,
one
sorry,
as
I should
well.
have, whoever wants to answer first.
Yeah, Henrik, do you want to go ahead?
I missed part of the question since my internet was lagging. I was trying to.
Yeah, I was just saying, you mentioned earlier about the fact that contracts tend to be longer in England, and we've heard about how there's more bureaucracy in setting up a business over here. Have you, both of you, got any other observations on how the sort of legal framework and dealing with lawyers and patent attorneys and accountants and other professional advisors is different in the two countries?
Yeah, I could start off with that. So if you think about for example, a contract between a client and us in Finland. So if we would agree a 2-year contract with the client, then we know the client will pay for 2 years and they will stay aboard for 2 years. And we've noticed in the UK, the contracts are not in the same way binding. So let's say you make a 2-year contract and the customer thinks that after a year that, yeah, we're actually going to try something else out. They might just send us an email, say, yeah, we're not going to continue. It's like, but we do have a 2-year contract. Yeah, but we're not going to continue. And then in Finland, if someone would say that, we could send them the invoice to a collecting agency and they would get the money immediately from the client. But in the UK, the market doesn't work the same way. So we've noticed that contracts are not the same way binding. So clients will try to get out of them much easier. We don't get them too often, but if they just want to get out of a contract, it doesn't seem to be the same way binding. And if it's binding, it's really hard to even collect the money after that. That's just
I think if they're properly drafted, they should be binding. So legally, you should be able to tie people down and stop them doing that. What you've got to look out for is, like, even if it's a 2-year contract, they might have a right to terminate prematurely on, say, 30 or 90 days notice. But I think also, I think what a lot of companies find is that it's all very well saying, well, you owe us this money, but then you've actually got to go after them for the money. And even if you get a judgment against them, you've still got to enforce that judgment. So, often it's not as easy as getting money out of people as you might think. So that's why we always say, particularly, if you're dealing with another contractual partner in another country, where it may not be that easy to get at them, try and spread your risk and limit it by getting as much money as you can up front, and doing your due diligence on them so that you know that they are, going to be reliable. And sometimes you think they are and they're not. But it's a bit like anything else, you want to know who you're going to be partnering up with.
Yep.
All right. I guess we have time for one more questions if anybody has anything to ask. Or if our speakers just want to add something. Sorry.
Just one quick kind of more of an observation, really, out of all of this. It's not a direct question to Hugo, Henrik, or anyone else. But I've been working very closely with a startup in Finland for a few years now. They're called 1IO, Finnish company based in Helsinki. They've expanded rapidly, and I would make one huge observation, and I think to an extent it's borne out by what Hugo and Henrik have been saying. It's so important to have a Brit here in the UK, working very closely with the client base, looking after a lot of the client relationships, but also working really closely with the Finns and bringing them in when you need them. But there's also some, some Brit to Brit conversations that happen in the background that help everything, that help the entire sales process move forwards. Without that, the sales cycle would be so much longer and may not succeed. But also the other point to make is you've got to have the right Brit with the right connections. So I happen to have the right connections for this Finnish company to be able to, reach out to the right client base and work on the sales opportunities and looking after delivery and the rest of it. But you have to choose that person really carefully.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and it is about having the right person with the right contacts, with the right capabilities and the right skill sets to be able to, understand your products, your services, your markets, your customer base that you're going for, and then make it happen for you.
Yeah, and often that is quite a narrowly defined skill set. I mean, I remember once we had a client, they were in the medtech field and sort of, they had, cosmetic, it was both cosmetic, largely cosmetic applications, but one of the guys they took on their board, because he said he had contacts, actually had his background was in biotech, so it was all sort of healthcare, but his contacts were completely useless, and he didn't really understand how the market worked. So I agree, you've got to have someone who has the finger on the pulse of both the national character of the countries involved and often a quite narrowly defined industrial market sector.
And culturally, just make one more point, which is a kind of cultural point. I've worked in Finland, got to know the Finns over quite some time. I would actually count some of my Finnish colleagues as some of the best friends I have. Over many years working with these guys, it's a much more kind of collegiate, friendly working together. And sometimes the Brit to Brit can be a bit not like that, but certainly with the Finns, on the cultural side of things, it's so different. It's so much more friendly. It's open. It's honest. It's quick, right? And it's direct. Brits can be a bit, read between the lines kind of thing. But I love that culture. So
yeah, having dealt with both, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really, really enjoying my time with the Finns. It's cracking, and really enjoying actually building their business here for them in the UK.
All right. Anyway, thank you. That's a good positive note to end with. I think some of our guests are already leaving since everybody is busy. So I'd just like to say thank you to all of our speakers today. And thank you for Marks Clerk, Leadoo and Logmore for making this event happen with us. If anybody wants to add anything or continue the conversation, that's fine by me. But I just wanted to say that before everybody leaves.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, many thanks for organizing this.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah, cheers. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, guys. Bye.